Hi, everybody. I am so excited to talk about something really interesting today. As you can see, I have Naomi Reina here, who is the genius behind Illuxology and Light-Filled Astrology, where she teaches God-centered astrological reading, and you can go from like knowing absolutely nothing to being able to read and interpret charts in an inspired way that honors God as the creator of this magnificent cosmic clock that we live in. Um, so so before we jump in, I want to tell you the backstory of why we're doing this video, which is that a couple weeks ago I hired Jan Beringer or Beringer. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say this.
Stranger. Yeah.
Beringer. Okay.
Yeah.
She's my assistant and she is incredible. She is just an absolute magnificent healer and astrologer herself. And I hired her to do some work on my business. And she wanted the astrological date of when I started my business. And I was like, oh, I don't have that. But I can tell you the moment that my third eye opened. I do have a chart for that. And that whole thing was this other thing, but I'll link to Jayan below because she's so good. Everyone should go work with Jayan if they feel the call. But she said it is really interesting that you feel like your business started when your third eye opened and that like your intuition, your business are the same thing, because that is kind of how it feels for me. Like, yes, I make money with my work, but really my work has always felt like this extension of the fact that like I woke up one day and had the access to these different skills that I had never had before. So I was telling Naomi about this and she asked to see the chart. And so I sent it to her and she said, well, I'm sure you've spent a lot of time with this chart. And I said, no, I really haven't. Like, I knew the moment and I never had run the chart. I never had done that. Like, I always knew that that moment existed and I've never spent quality time with this chart. But I showed it to Naomi. She had all these interesting insights and she said, we should really just do a video about this and show your audience because I think everybody would be really interested by this. So that's what we're doing today. And this is the chart. And I still haven't really taken a really solid look at it. I've probably spent a total of 14 minutes looking at this between JN's session and then like this very brief, I mean, Naomi and I talked about this for like 4 minutes or something on Voxer or something. And now here we are. So Naomi, I'll just turn it over to you because I'm just really interested to see, I'm just interested to hear everything that you have to say about this.
I'm so excited about this. Thank you so much, Allie. Yes, when you showed me this chart, I was like, what? Like immediately, like 5 things jumped out at me that were so significant and telling, and to me, just kind of deepened more understanding around you and what is going on with your intuition. And I thought this would be fun to kind of feature, like natal charts are amazing, but when you have a significant event chart, something that is reflecting like the event of something that was born, something that was new, like a business or like a marriage or something like that. It's equal to a natal chart in a lot of ways. And so, yes, this moment, not everybody has the moment that their quote business took their first breath is basically what a business chart would be, a business natal chart. And you do, because yes, this was such a significant moment. And when we were chatting back and forth and you were like, yeah, it was at 4:30 a.m. on January 1st. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to see the chart. Cause like most people are like, yeah, it was like in early January is like how most people would remember it. But for you, because this was so drastic, you have it. And so it just delights me. So the very first thing that I noticed about this chart was the rising in Sagittarius at 0 degrees Sagittarius. So this is a completely new energy around being a teacher and having vision. Like that is incredible because the statement, every sign has a statement of what their energy is kind of re-expressing all the time. And for Sagittarius, it's I see. It's a vision. It's the seer that's like pointing the arrow, you know, and I'm a rising Sagittarius and I'm a sun Sagittarius and my sun and my rising are conjunct. And so like I have really big vision. Most people are like, whoa, your vision and your optimism around it is like overwhelming, right? Usually in a good way. And you have that. And the part of fortune, which is a more advanced part of the chart, but fun to play with, is conjunct the rising as well. And I'm really conservative on conjunct for the part of fortune because it's a mathematical point. And so I don't give it a very generous, like if it's 5 degrees away, I don't consider that conjunct. But this is like a little bit more than 1 degree away. And that is really significant. So there's this fortune, there's this ease, there's this like offering that happens right at the inception point, because that arrow that points at the 9 o'clock hour of all charts is the ascendant. It's the rising. Ascendant and rising are interchangeable. And that is like so powerful. It's the pushing off point. It's the hello, I'm in the world now kind of moment for every single chart. And for your moment, you have this gift that you're offering. And then right behind that, you have White Moon Selena, which is like this very pure light energy as well. So you just have like this little cluster of super awesome right there,
Oh, it's
like
at
just boom, boom, boom.
222. That's kind of cool.
Yes, yes. And so White Moon Selena is another mathematical point. It's not an actual body, like a celestial body in the sky. But all of these things are perfectly calculated. And then from there, like I saw that, the next thing I glanced at was the midheaven, because that's how you show up publicly. That's the arrow that's usually pointing a little to the left, a little to the right, but it's kind of close to the 12 o'clock hour in charts. And the midheaven is the highest point of the chart for the location that it was captured at and all of that. And so this is in Virgo. Virgo is a very godly service energy. And so midheavens in Virgo, which I actually also have myself in my natal chart, it is this very like, okay, God, I will do whatever you tell me to in my career. Like, I am here to serve you. My whole career is in service of you. Like how a nurse serves. It's a very dutiful, very calculated, very grounded, practical kind of service. And so when you see this in charts, there's other types of midheavens that can really show up in service oriented, like your natal midheaven alley, which is in Pisces, which is the opposite of Virgo, has that very unconditional love service aspect, where Virgo is like, I will dutifully and meticulously execute everything just kind of in the background, almost like just kind of going, but it's hard to be in the background with a rising Sagittarius. So it's a it's an interesting balance. But then we have, if you look at the sun and the moon, so anytime you look at a chart, if somebody hands you a chart and you're just like looking at it, you always look for the sun and the moon glyphs. See, when did this happen? Like what's going on internally, what's going on externally. They're super, super close. They're less than 1 degree. They're just over 1 degree apart. They're 1 degree in 2 minutes, like not actual time minutes, but astrological minutes of calculation in the 360-degree wheel. And this is a new moon chart. This is right before, this is maybe 2 hours before a new moon. So this is in the point right before all the light goes away and right before the moon like enters behind the sun, like and kind of hides in the sun's light completely. It's a very, very, very internal kind of like going completely in for reevaluation and for processes and inner vision. So that's fascinating. Your third eye, which is a very outer vision experience that you've been sharing with the world, popped open at this new moon in Capricorn. And so we know about Capricorn energy that Capricorn is very mature. It's very long-term thinking. Technically, Capricorn is a feminine energy in astrology, because all earth signs and water signs are feminine and all fire signs and air signs are masculine, technically. However, going at it from the masculine feminine balance, which is a huge part of what you do, is really, really fascinating, because we typically think of Capricorn as a much more masculine energy, kind of like the dad sitting in the leather wingback chair with a newspaper, smoking a pipe while the kids play on the ground and he completely ignores them. Like that's kind of one of the archetypes of Capricorn. But since Capricorn is a feminine energy, and obviously this is a very feminine experience that you're having and you're a woman, Capricorn holds more of the archetype of the queen, like the very elegant, well-postured, like sees the vision, understands what needs to be done, is willing to go in from a delegation standpoint and a willingness to be involved for the long haul queen. But we
Wow.
don't just have that independence of that energy with the sun and the moon there. Pluto is only, it's not even a half a degree past the sun. So this new moon that happened was pretty much, it's less than a degree away from Pluto, which really brings the energy deep. It takes it to a transformation level. So it's almost like a Scorpio new moon. It has like undertones of that because Scorpio rules Pluto. And so you have this very Scorpio energy in with all of this Capricorn energy that is ensuring that the energy that you bring to your business, to this intuitive gift that was given to you, will create transformation for yourself and for others. And then, as if that wasn't enough, it's like, and there's more. We have Mercury also hanging out. Like we have this really tight cluster from almost 10 degrees of the moon. It's just like really, really close to the next degree point, just until 12 and 3/4 of a degree. So we're talking within a tight, tight 3-degree orb, we have the sun, the moon, Pluto, and Mercury. And they're all direct, and they're all in the second house, which has to do with things and money and stuff and physical stuff that you touch. That's what the second house is. Things that you can touch, the furniture in your house, the land underneath of your home, the earth, the senses, all of these things. And so this became a very practical experience that has traditionally been kind of allocated to just the spiritual. Just amazing. Okay. I
Wow.
have so many more thoughts, but what are your thoughts?
Oh my gosh. Well, I pulled up my natal chart on my phone and I've been kind of like looking at it while you were talking and like cross-referencing to things, but it is really interesting sitting down and looking at this chart. When I really have never done that, even though I knew the time.
It
Um,
happens all the time. Like so many people, they never look at certain things and then it's like, oh, I should look at this. Yes, so this is
that's
normal.
so funny. Oh, well, that's good to
Mhm.
hear. It's funny. When I was talking with Jayanne and during the course of the session, she was like, "That's weird that you don't know the date that you started your business because you had to file an LLC." She was like,
Right.
"Allie, you do know the moment you filed
Yeah,
your."
you can look it up.
I'm like, "Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I actually do know that." But like, and as soon as she said that, I like suddenly remembered all of my filing documents, which are right over there, and I'm like, "Oh, I could look that up," but it still feels like this is the real moment. But having this, I mean, Capricorn is a businessy oriented
Yes.
sign.
Yes.
And the second house is, I wouldn't say it's a business oriented necessarily, but it
It's
is
how
stuff,
your money shows
money.
up.
It's how your money shows up.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so it is really interesting to have this really tight stellium there.
Yes.
Um,
Really tight with
it's so
really
tight.
significant things. This isn't like rando outlying asteroids and stuff, which still have merit, but they do not carry nearly as much weight as things like the sun and the moon and Mercury and Pluto. Like, what?
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty crazy. I mean, as soon as I ran the chart, and of course, I have a whole bunch of like little extraneous stuff. I mean, like all of these tiny mathematical points and asteroids are still interesting, which is why I leave them on there. But
Mhm.
um,
They carry less weight.
they
And
carry
it's
less
so
weight.
important to know that. And when you're first beginning, don't turn on those extra stuff. It'll just confuse you because it looks like they're all equal, but they're not.
They're not. It's so true. But the fact that this all just like lined up and made
Yes.
these very stark
Exact.
aspects in the middle, I was like, whoa, wowzies, that's pretty interesting. And then
Yes.
as I've been sitting here looking at it with my own natal chart, one thing that is worth noting is that my natal Neptune is in Capricorn at 7 degrees. So my natal Neptune, which deals with your third eye and like intuition and stuff, sits right here on this edge. It's like right next to the moon. And these four create like such an intense like connection with that natal Neptune.
Well, and what's so interesting to think about, if you think of the chart in a living way, which I love to do, because I'm all about the transits and like, what does it mean? And what's the story that's going on here? And this is a little bit more advanced for astrology, but I'm going to explain it in a way that hopefully it'll make sense for people that are maybe less, that there aren't full blown astrologers. But with your natal Neptune being at 7 degrees of Capricorn,
Yep.
the planets go around in a counterclockwise fashion. And so if you were to go back a couple of days, that means that the sun was conjunct your natal Neptune just a couple days before that, kind of passed by and had a conversation. And technically is still conjunct. It's only like 3 degrees away, which is absolutely conjunct when it comes to the sun. And the sun has a really huge orb, is what it's called, where it like kind of has this larger space where it touches and it affects and interacts with other planets as it goes around. And so the sun came along and had a conversation with your Neptune. And then just hours before this happened, the moon was having a conversation with your natal Neptune. So the transiting the moon in the sky that's kind of holding the energy of emotion collectively had a conversation with your personal intuition and sense of spirituality and connection with the other dimensions and with the other side of the veil, which is what Neptune represents. It's a very potent, selfless, ethereal, long-term thinking, godly energy is kind of how I've come to know Neptune. And so both of these just passed by. Mercury would have passed by not too long before as well, because Mercury is going fast. And so all of these energies just had a conversation with your natal Neptune, which I find very significant. It's kind of like they had a meeting and then they went on and it was like, okay, now I know what to do with all of this intuition. And that's something like once a month, the moon is going to be conjunct your natal Neptune, and once a year, the sun is going to be conjunct your natal Neptune. But to have them in such close succession, that is not typical.
Wow. I had not even thought about that at all. Um, and so one thing that is really interesting with all of this is so the backstory of how I like woke up one day. I wrote a whole book about this, mastering your intuition, because people take issue. They're like, how calling it a gift. I say my gifts woke up, but I hate that. I don't think it is like a real. I mean, I feel like this is something that can happen to people because we're humans and we all have a third eye, and it can open if you like meet the different criteria. But what had happened was 6 months earlier, I had felt like God was telling me to be more feminine. And then and I really rebelled against that and I hated it and I was very angry and I was doing what God was telling me to
I
do, but I
wonder
was,
if that was at the full moon in Capricorn 6 months earlier.
oh my gosh,
Because like I'm all about the cycles and how
it truly could have been.
because 6 months earlier it would have been a full moon in Capricorn that could
That
have
is
been
so
around
true.
your natal Neptune. Like
That
having
is
this
so true.
awareness, and then 6 months later it comes back to like you needed that time to incubate. I know
Yeah.
I cut you off with that, but I'm like, we have to just
We
point that
have to look this up. I
out.
know. I'm like, okay, actually looking it up feels like a lot of work, but I'm gonna do it now, but not right this second.
No, but it's
I
just an
bet that's
interesting
true.
concept. Like the energy around it probably kind of was around the full moon in Capricorn if it was 6 months earlier.
It probably was. Well, and my natal Venus is at 18 degrees of
Mm-hmm.
Cancer. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm wondering now if,
Yeah.
what was the sun doing triggering my natal Venus, which deals with feminine
Yes.
energy, that full moon in Capricorn, and then it like triggers this thing. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
I have to look it up. Um, oh,
I
no,
love
what
this.
was I
Like I
gonna
could just sit
say?
around all day and just go down all the wormholes with people, like just like, ooh, and then we should look up this chart and this, and I love it. I love
It
it so
is the
much.
wormholes. Oh, but what I was going to say was I know it was January the 1st
Hmm.
because it was my New Year's resolution. And the night before at December 31st, I mean New Year's Eve, which interestingly is my wedding anniversary. Um, okay, here we go. I just made this chart right now. I promised God that I was going to stop
Promises for intuition.
fighting. Yeah, that's what I did. I felt like God had been the one to tell me to like be more feminine, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop fighting you on feminine energy, and I'm especially gonna stop fighting you on logic versus intuition because I really wanted everything to make sense. And guess what? Everything does make sense when you know things like astrology. Then it's like, oh, yes, it's all explained. But if you don't know, then things of intuition and things of timing don't make sense. And I didn't want to just trust God with the timing and stuff. But that moment at 11:30 p.m., it was 11:30. I remember like looking at the clock and being like, I want to make it up till midnight, but I can't. I'm going to make my resolution right now. And I like got on my knees. And I don't normally make my resolutions as like a prayer or something, but I was like, Lord, I'm done fighting you. My resolution this year is that like from now on, I'm going to do anything that you tell me to do. I'm just going to do it. The weirder it is, the faster I'm going to do it. So never let me think of anything wrong because I'm totally going to do it. And so that was at 11:30, and then I went to bed. And then I woke up at 4:30. I like looked over and I had this vision of this lady's energy field, and I knew how to heal it. And I like knew all, I like had x-ray vision for people's health problems from like that moment on. I woke up and had it at 4:30 a.m. I looked at the clock. So that's why, but look at that, just what you were saying, that moon at
Was
6
conjunct.
degrees. Yeah,
Mhm.
it was right there, right next to my 7 degree Capricorn, Capricorn Neptune. And so again, Neptune is the guy in charge of your third eye. And look at that. The transiting Neptune at that time, or like the Neptune at that time, was at 3 degrees of Pisces, and my natal moon is at 1 degree of Pisces. So that is just some really, really interesting.
Yeah.
That's just really interesting.
Neptune had been interacting with your moon for quite a while because Neptune moves so slowly. So obviously Neptune would have been at really similar just a few days later. And what is also interesting is I saw this on the other chart as well. And then of course it's on this chart because it's only days earlier. Venus is retrograde, which you're talking about like surrendering and allowing God, like you're offering God like your femininity and you're saying, I will open up to this. And retrogrades, Venus only goes retrograde once every about 18 months. And then she'll be retrograde for 6 whole weeks. It's a really intensive retrograde when you kind of contrast it with how the other patterns of retrogrades go. The only one that goes retrograde less frequently is Mars, and he'll go retrograde for about 2 months every 2 years. So Mars and Venus have interesting retrograde patterns. But with Venus in retrograde in Capricorn, this is fascinating to me because there's such a surrender energy in the sign of like, I don't need to surrender. I know exactly what to do. And then when Venus is retrograde through this whole awakening for you, it's almost like you're fully in that feminine. And I don't think this is always the case with Venus retrograde, but that's the energy that I'm seeing in this chart is there is a total and complete surrender because anytime something goes retrograde, it goes inward. It goes inward first and then can come outward. So there's like a delay. And so Venus retrograde, like in a natal chart when somebody's born, usually they kind of struggle a little bit in romantic relationships until they can find their own gifts, their own benefits to that retrograde. And with this, I feel like because it's more of a transit chart than, you know, a natal chart as far as like somebody experiencing their whole life, but your business has this interesting relationship ongoing with Venus in retrograde and that kind of constant reminder of surrender, 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 the feminine.
Yeah. I also have to say, this is pretty interesting that the ascendant was
Yes.
exactly at 00 degrees of
And
Libra.
the midheaven.
Oh my gosh. And the
And
mid
the part of fortune is right conjunct. It's really close. It's not quite conjunct because I'm so picky with orbs for the part of fortune, but it's right all up in there. And if you looked at the clock, did you look at the clock at 11:30 and then say your prayer?
oh my gosh. Now I
Because
don't remember that. Yeah, yeah, I think that is true.
that
I
would
think I did
nudge
that.
the ascendant down, and it probably is like a degree away from the part of fortune.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. Probably my prayer was like 11:31 or something like that. Bing.
Right. And so it's like it adjusts it a little bit. You can see like just 1 minute later it goes like a degree, like and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
just nerding out over the exactness, but this is just fascinating. And I feel like, I mean, I know that your third eye opening up was not only a huge benefit to you, but it really was a benefit for you to be able to serve so many people. Um, I know that the people watching this, and please comment below and share with Allie some of the stories of how she has changed your life because she deserves to hear them. I know she hears them a lot, but I'm reopening that up because this work that you do, it benefits you. And in some ways, it's actually, I know that it's a little bit of a burden to you because it's not a burden, you love it, but it consumes so much of you. And it's like you're this vessel that's just helping us in a way that I personally have never seen another healer do. And I know lots of healers and lots of really great healers, but the accessibility and the practicality and the way that you share so open-hearted, I feel like it allows people to kind of step over the blocks that they've had previously to trying to heal and to get better and all of that. And it's like, boom, here you go. Just here's the map. You can do it. Like, get into her ultra fancy membership if you're not already, because it literally just holds you by the hand. And it's like better than therapy. I've had a ton of therapy, and I've had so many powerful shifts in Allie's classes going through them than some of my therapy sessions. And that's really saying a lot, I think. And I felt like therapy was great. I thought it was really, really helpful. So I love looking at these charts of yours, because um, I think it just reaffirms the gift. There's that word again, that you are, and these gifts that you do have. I do see them as gifts. I don't understand why people would take issue with that, but I would imagine you've heard everything from all different kinds of people. So so many things in these charts, though. Go back to the other one. There was something else I wanted to point out. I think it was your Mars. So the Mars is in the
Oh,
first
wait.
house.
I want to say this is interesting too. The 12th house here is exact my sun, the cusp of the 12th house, right?
That is huge. So the
At 4
entrance
degrees of
point,
Virgo.
because the 12th house is our subconscious, and it's the parts of ourselves that are hidden. It actually sometimes represents prison and enemies, because it's the parts of ourselves that we can't see. We can't fully perceive uh, everything that's in the 12th house. So that's fascinating that your natal sun was kind of in, like, if you
Like
overlaid your
illuminating
chart.
the cusp of the 12th
Oh, I love
house.
it.
Turn it on.
I love it. I love it. And so what I saw was you've got your Mars in Libra, which is what we call it its detriment, because Libra is the sign of peace and balance, and Mars is the sign of war. It's the planet of war. And so Mars is super happy in Aries, which is where your natal Mars is. Do you know what degree your natal Mars is at? I don't know that.
13 degrees.
So
So
you
that's actually
basically,
pretty
Mars was
tight.
opposing Mars for you, like
Yeah.
your natal Mars.
Yeah, a tight, oh yeah, an opposition. Yeah.
And so
Mm.
Mars in Libra, usually I've never met a Mars in Libra that was very good at negotiating conflict until they've done a lot of work. But once they do a lot of work, like, it never just naturally happens, but when they do a lot of work, they can be the most powerful, potent peacemakers of all time. Like, the vision I get when I look at a really, really, really healthy natal Mars in Libra is they could, like, walk out onto a battlefield and, like, negotiate with both sides, and the war stops. Like, we don't have to fight, and there can be level-headed ways of allowing everybody to win. But usually natal Mars Libra is somebody that's like, we're just going to sweep it under the rug, and you're tripping over the rug because there's so much stuff under it, and it's just awful, and nobody's speaking up, and it's one that usually people struggle a lot with conflict until they realize and they can harness the power of that Mars in detriment, which sounds like a terrible sentence, but it's really just, hey, by the way you handle conflict is massively different than the way that the majority of people handle conflict. And once you realize that and harness that, you can bless so many people. And so you have that really potent energy in there that has that ability to say, let's lay down our weapons. We can bury them if we need to. Let's come together in the balance and harmony of the masculine and feminine, which technically Libra is a masculine sign in astrology, but has a very feminine quality because it rules Venus. And so Libra has that, it's masculine, but it rules Venus. So it's constantly caught in that masculine feminine dynamic. And it's in the 10th house, which is the house of public reputation and career, and how people see you from far away. 10th house placements are going to show up stronger to people you're not meeting face to face. They just see you on the internet, or they see you across the room, or something like that. And so you have this fierceness that's very tempered in your business, which I super love. But then you've got your North Node is taking you to the 11th house in Scorpio, which is fascinating because you would have just had your nodal reversal just a few years ago. Not even. This was probably like 8 or 9 months ago, because we're still just barely with the South Node in Libra right now. And so the 11th house is the house of tribe and connections, and the family that you choose type of a thing, like the people you find on the internet that are part of your same weird vibe that, like, you totally love. Like, your sole direction of your business is taking you into that and taking you away from the fifth house. And so it's bringing you into this very 11th house energy, which is very potent for a career chart, for a business chart, because it's the gathering of the people.
Wow. How big do you count an orb for Pluto?
Pluto, I usually only give 2, maybe 3 degrees.
Okay. My natal Pluto is at 10 degrees of Scorpio. Oh, which is exact
Exact.
the cusp of the
That's
12th house.
very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
But I was like, oh man, that's so crazy.
Because Pluto moves so slow, if you were to have a large orb with Pluto, you'd be in like Pluto transits for like 10 years.
That's true.
Like,
Okay. And
and
that's not true of people's lived experience. Like
right,
clearly some of
exactly.
them
And
are.
I find conservatively going with 2 degrees, but kind of paying attention at 3 degrees, like between the 2 and 3 degrees is valid. But
Okay.
within 2 degrees, absolutely. Pluto is definitely like, but in this chart where Pluto is, I mean, it's less than a half a degree away from the sun. The sun has a much larger orb than Pluto.
Yeah,
But
that's 10 degrees. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I usually say more like 8, but some astrologers definitely go all the way to 10. And especially if you have like the sun and moon are 10 degrees apart, they both have such a strong orb. I do consider that sort of conjunct, but it's
Okay.
not the same as like exactly conjunct, obviously. The the stronger the closeness of it, the stronger the energy.
Okay.
Um, and so I'm just really conservative because accuracy is wildly important to me.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. For all the astro newbies out there, the conjunction is like how close they are together. And when planets are close together to the point of their conjunct, their energies
Fuse.
kind of
They
fuse. Yeah, they
cancel.
kind of wiggle together and get really similar. So this right here is not really the sun and the moon and Pluto and Mercury. It's sun, moon, Pluto, Mercury.
Yes, exactly.
That's the energy that's
It's
happening here.
like the visual of if you were reaching into a bag of M&Ms and you're like, I want the green one, but you kind of grab and you also get like the red one and the yellow one and like you get them all because they're just so close. Like when things are that close, you're getting a conglomeration of all of the energy kind of fused and mixed together.
I was thinking like Play-Doh, like
Yes,
all, all your Play-Doh colors.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And
Ah,
conjunctions are the strongest of the aspects. You also have like oppositions, squares, trines, sextiles.
the aspects are in here. That's
Yeah, those
all
are the
this
lines
line.
in the middle. But conjunctions are always going to be the strongest energy. And it's the easiest visually to see. You can see, like, oh, 9 degrees,
Right next to each
50,
other.
10 degrees, 52. Those are pretty close. Like, once you understand the most basics of like how the chart moves.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So before we call it a day, I know you have to go to your next thing, but as I was watching all this, I was thinking, okay, what can we learn from this? Like all of the people watching, like what can we learn from this?
How is
And
this practical?
how is this practical for them? Guys, this is really interesting for me. I mean, I think this is generally interesting. It's just
Right.
interesting stuff. But one thing, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on like how do we apply this for like just everybody. But one thing that I was thinking of was how the planetary like space weather and planetary movement in the context of your own natal chart and your life experiences really combine for your personal clock. And because I talked to somebody recently who was telling me she's just in so much distress because she just wants her third eye to open. She just wants to be super intuitive. She just wants to be super intuitive. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, oh man, I mean, like that was not something that I wanted at all. But if I had wanted it before that, I just would have been frustrated because it looks like the stars literally aligned.
Yes.
And so is there this thought perhaps that like if you're waiting for the thing, anything, I mean like your third eye to open, but like you want the house, you want the whatever, you want to get into this college or you want the wedding or whatever, um that there is perhaps this energy this the stars need to align and we just have to like hang in there and keep making it through this cosmic clock until all the planets show
The
up for us.
moment.
I don't know.
It's both, but as I've studied astrology, it's really opened up the doors of compassion that some things just take time. Like someone who hasn't been through their first Saturn return is just simply not going to understand things until they go through it. The Saturn return happens around 27, 28, 29 years old. It's just a life cycle that happens. Somebody who, like, if you haven't experienced something, you just haven't experienced it. So there is an element of surrender. One of my dearest friends gave me the title Queen of Timing because she says I have a more interesting relationship with time than anybody she's ever seen before. And it's true. And it's really cool to just surrender to time and just like you would surrender to, like, as a surfer on the waves, knowing that the ocean could dash you to pieces any second. But if you're an expert surfer, you move with it and you can have fun and you can allow yourself to have control over the things you have control over, but completely surrender to the power of the ocean. It's the exact same thing with time. And so if you're looking at the transit, say you get to where you're like, okay, I understand this enough. You pull up your chart and you're like, oh, I'm going through something really hard. Like Pluto is transiting across my natal moon right now. That's going to go on for about 2 years of really, really profound inner transformation. By the way, if your moon is at the very beginning of Aquarius or the very, very end of Capricorn, that's what you're going through right now. And it is one of those things that you might be looking around and you're like, why is no one else having such a hard time? We're all going through the same thing. You're not. And so there's this awareness of that where you can kind of map it out and you can be like, okay, January 11th of 2025 is when the energy fully moves out of the way and I will be free of this. So you can kind of know, like, I've got a while, but what you can do is you can make the most of what's going on. Because usually when we're going through a hard time, we resist and we resist and we resist, or we clutch to things like this person you just referenced that was like, I really want my third eye to open. It's like, oh, sweetie, what you resist persists. Like if you're clutching to things so hard, there's literally no room. If your fist is closed tight around something, or if you're pushing against something, I am convinced that God does not send us terrible things. And I don't even think God tests us. I think that it's more that we get in the way of allowing the massive flow of beautiful, amazing energy of the right connections and the right money and the right house and the right, like the things that would just bring us so much joy and feed our mission on what we covenanted to do here on earth. And instead of doing this and saying, okay, I'm open, you can't see all my arms, but like you and instead of allowing and receiving, we literally do this and we put our foot up and we're like, no, I don't want that, when it's literally, and heaven respects that and goes, okay, like we're not gonna force you with it, but the energy of the universe is flowing. And so when you resist it, just like you resist the ocean, you'd get tossed all about and you break your back and it would be terrible. And that might be how you feel in your life right now for people that are watching this. But it's really just about, if you surrender and you go to your great and powerful God and you say, what am I supposed to do with this energy? Please show me what I can't see. And then be ready. Like Ali had said, like, I'll do whatever you say. I've prayed this prayer before and I gave God the caveat of, please remind me that I prayed this prayer when the stuff shows up so I can recognize that this is what I prayed for, so that I can go back into surrender instead of my habitual resistance. And so when you see what's going on with the transits, or you see what's going on in your natal chart, there's an ability to just accept it and to say, okay, this is how I'm divinely wired. And one of my favorite questions ever is, what is right about this that I'm not seeing?
Ooh.
So many of us ask ourselves, what's wrong
Uh,
with me? Like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, ugh. Like,
I
cancel,
asked
delete,
Naomi
please.
that the other
Please,
day.
please cancel, delete. If you ever hear yourself saying that in your head, like I literally, when I started to notice I was doing this, I would say out loud, cancel, delete, because I never ask myself that question anymore. I even created a bubble when I said it because I was like, this is not a question I'm asking myself, but just as an example. And anytime I would catch myself saying, what's wrong with me or whatever, I would cancel, delete, and I would go, what's right with me? Or what's right with me that I'm not seeing? And your brain loves to answer questions. So don't ever ask your brain a question that is going to make your life worse. Ask your brain questions that will make your life better. This is like auto hacking life. I used to be the worst at this ever. Now I'm pretty good at it. And so ask yourself, like, what's right about my chart that I'm not seeing? Like, oh, I thought I hated Gemini energy and I found out I have a Gemini moon. Bleh, now I hate myself. Like, I've seen all kinds of things come up, right? And so it's like, well, what's right about this that I'm not seeing? And just let yourself melt into that. And then you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish during like a really intensive Pluto transit, or having like Venus in her detriment in your natal chart or something like that can end up being your superpower. I've seen it happen. It's happened to me. And it's so cool. And I love waking people up to saying, let me show you in a light-filled way what your chart is trying to tell you.
I love that so much. My Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini in my natal chart, but I love it. I think it is so powerful. Even though
Mhm.
it's like traditionally bad luck, I'm like, I'm into this bad luck. If it's bad luck, I want more of it. I love it. Okay, you have to go. But your, oh my gosh, your certification program is open right now for registration
Is
and it's
open right
starting
now.
like
Yes.
ASAP.
Yes. So if you want to get into the light filled astrology certification, it is phenomenal. It's a 12-week program. You can get literally all the details. And I have an awesome video on the page. If you go to astrologycert.com, CERT, and use Allie's code, she has a very special code of 1100 Allie Duzette. Make sure you spell her name right. I laugh so hard every time people misspell her name. ALLIEDUZETT. So 1100 Allie Duzette, all capitals, all one word. They'll give you $1,100 off of the cohort. And it will tell me that you saw this video and that you knew about this and you can come join us because we have had over 100 students. I just checked this morning, it was 111. It's how fun. I love numbers. Have gone through the program or are currently in it. I've got 31 fully certified light field astrologers and counting. And we just have like the best time. And we have this special little community where you can hang out with people that speak this language and ask your questions and things like that, in addition to like Allie's awesome community and my other awesome stuff. But it's just the best ever. If you're feeling called and you're like, I really need to learn more about astrology, come do it with me. I'm safe. I'm awesome. I'm really thorough and super organized and very accurate.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, the thing about studying this stuff is that I just feel like when you understand the stars, you can understand everything.
Yes.
I haven't recorded it yet, but I'm really interested. Tucker Carlson said the exact time of his interview with Putin, and I'm like, I want to run that chart. I want to look at that chart. So that's on my to-do
Yes.
list. But like you can look at what's happening in the world, you can look at what's happening in your life, in your kid's life, in your spouse's life, in your parents' life. Look at it in the context of all these things, and the world just makes more sense with the stuff
Especially
that
if
you see.
you remove the ego when you look at charts. I talk about that a lot because if you're going in like, I'm going to find out what's wrong with this person or what happened, like what was so
You can't
terrible.
do
It's
that.
like, you can do that. You're just going to get inaccurate results, in my opinion. Because when you go in with your filter, as opposed to compassion and love and light, compassion and love and light make things more accurate because you can see it the way God sees it. And in my opinion, the way God sees things is the most accurate. And that's where I want to be. And that's why I do things the way that I do. Because if you go in with hate and anger, it's like the boiling water that you can't see through anymore. You're not seeing things accurately when you're mad or resentful or bitter or frustrated. But if you can drop that, and we do a lot of that, we do a visualization in my course of like, drop your ego, invite it to leave. Say, thank you so, so much. You need to leave because I need to look at this chart. All of a sudden, whoa, you look at your kids' charts and be like, I never saw that before. I can't even believe this. But you have to get rid of the ego first, even if it's just temporarily, and then you can see it accurately.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much,
You're so
Naomi.
welcome.
This is so good. Okay, everybody, I'll have her links below and everything for Naomi and also for Jan. But thank you so much. This was so much fun. And hopefully we'll have you back on here again soon.
I would love that so much. And fun fact, Jayan is one of my certified light field astrologers too.
That's true. And
She's so
she has
amazing.
married the
Yeah.
stuff like she does this really cool stuff where it's like astrology and intuitive healing. So good. Oh,
So
she's
good. It's so beautiful. Okay.
people.
Love you all
Okay,
so much. Thank you
bye.
so much, Allie. You're such a delight.